In the late 1970s, a man terrorized Sacramento in the most horrifying way imaginable, drinking the blood of his victims and leaving a trail of death. Known as the Vampire of Sacramento, Richard Trenton Chase's crimes shocked an entire city. Watch till the end to uncover the twisted mind behind these murders, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more chilling true crime stories. In the quiet suburbs of Santa Clara County, California, a boy named Richard Trenton Chase was born on May 23, 1950. On the surface, he seemed like any other child, but beneath this ordinary exterior, darkness was quietly taking root. From an early age, Richard displayed disturbing behavior that left those around him uneasy. He killed animals, set fires, and seemed to take a strange fascination in the fragility of life. Friends and neighbors began to notice that something wasn't right. His actions were more than mischief. They hinted at something far more sinister brewing beneath the surface. As Richard grew, his mind became a prison of fear and paranoia. He developed an extreme obsession with his health, convinced that his body was failing him. He believed that his heart would occasionally stop, that someone had stolen parts of his pulmonary artery, and that the only way to prevent death was through bizarre rituals. One of his more infamous habits included placing oranges on his head, convinced the vitamin C would seep directly into his brain. These delusions weren't harmless quirks. They were a warning sign of a mind slowly unraveling. By adulthood, Richard's paranoia had escalated to terrifying levels. He became convinced that mysterious death rays from UFOs were draining his blood, leaving him weak and on the brink of death. The fear consumed him, driving him to believe that drinking human blood was the only way to survive. This horrifying logic would soon push him beyond the line of morality, planting the seeds of a series of crimes that would shock an entire city. Those who knew him at the time couldn't have imagined the monster he was about to become. Richard's obsession with blood and death was no longer confined to his mind. It was about to spill into the streets of Sacramento, leaving a trail of terror and destruction in its wake. Every unlocked door, every quiet house became a potential target. And the people of Sacramento would soon learn that the evil lurking in their city was unlike anything they had ever seen. Part 1 sets the stage for a story of chilling obsession, unimaginable horror, and a descent into madness. It's the beginning of a journey into the mind of Richard Trenton Chase, the man history would forever remember as the Vampire of Sacramento. By the late 1970s, Richard Trenton Chase had fully descended into a world dominated by fear, delusion, and obsession. Sacramento, a city that had once felt safe, was about to become the stage for one of the most horrifying killing sprees in American history. Richard's paranoia had evolved into something far darker. He now believed that drinking human blood was not only necessary for survival but would protect him from the mysterious death rays he was convinced were sapping his life force. On the cold night of December 29, 1977, Chase struck for the first time. He broke into the home of his unsuspecting victims, entering through unlocked doors as he had been watching for days. What followed was unspeakable. The violence was brutal and methodical, yet fueled by a deranged logic only Richard could understand. His compulsion to drink blood and consume the flesh of his victims had crossed every boundary of human morality. Sacramento would later learn that the horror had only just begun. The city was gripped by fear. Neighbors began locking doors, but the terror was invisible, unpredictable, and utterly terrifying. Richard's crimes were not motivated by gain or revenge. They were driven by a delusion so powerful that it justified every horrific act in his mind. No one could anticipate where or when he would strike next. Parents clutched their children tighter, and ordinary households became fortresses against an enemy that seemed both human and monstrous. As the killings escalated, Chase became more brazen. On January 27, 1978, he committed one of his most notorious attacks, murdering Evelyn Miroth and her 6-year-old son, alongside 2 other victims in a single spree. The brutality was unimaginable. He mutilated bodies, removed organs, and even filled them with blood, carrying them away as trophies of his deranged rituals. Sacramento's police force scrambled to understand the pattern, but the randomness of his attacks made him a ghost, untouchable and unpredictable. Part 2 reveals the terrifying reality of Richard Trenton Chase's descent into bloodlust, a man whose delusions turned into actions so dark that they left an entire city in shock. The Vampire of Sacramento was no longer just a troubled man. He had become a monster, and the nightmare had only just begun. The terror that gripped Sacramento finally came to an end on January 27, 1978. The same night, Richard Trenton Chase committed one of his most gruesome attacks. After a spree of murders that had left the city paralyzed with fear, a witness finally saw Chase leaving a crime scene and alerted the police. His capture was swift, but the horror of his crimes had already been etched into the minds of everyone in the community. During his arrest, Chase's deranged behavior was impossible to ignore. He appeared disoriented, paranoid, and disconnected from reality. He spoke of blood, death rays, and his need to consume human flesh to survive. Investigators realized that this was not the work of a typical killer. Richard's mind was fractured, trapped in a nightmarish world of delusions. Yet the scale of his crimes demanded justice. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia, a severe mental illness that had fueled his obsession with blood and death. Despite this diagnosis, the court deemed him competent to stand trial. The trial became a window into the horrifying mind of the man the media had dubbed the Vampire of Sacramento. Witnesses described the brutality of his murders, while experts detailed the depths of his psychosis. The courtroom was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and fascination as the full extent of his actions was revealed. Richard Trenton Chase was convicted of 6 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, a verdict that shocked few given the evidence. Yet even behind bars, he remained a figure of morbid fascination, a man whose crimes were driven not by hatred or greed, but by a delusional obsession that blurred the lines between life and death. Sacramento began to heal, but the psychological scars of Chase's reign of terror lingered. Families mourned, and the city struggled to comprehend how one man's madness had turned ordinary homes into scenes of unimaginable horror. The story of the Vampire of Sacramento would endure as a chilling reminder of the darkest corners of the human mind and the terrifying consequences when obsession and delusion collide. Richard Trenton Chase, the man the world knew as the Vampire of Sacramento, never lived to see the full consequences of his actions outside prison walls. On December 26, 1980, just 2 years after his conviction, Chase died in San Quentin State Prison from an overdose of antidepressant medication. Officially ruled a suicide, his death was almost as tragic and disturbing as the life he had lived, a life consumed by delusions, paranoia, and bloodlust. Even in death, the horror of his crimes lingered. Sacramento, a city once peaceful and ordinary, had been scarred forever. Families struggled to come to terms with the unimaginable violence inflicted on their loved ones. And the story of Chase became a grim cautionary tale about the consequences of untreated mental illness combined with unchecked obsession. Psychologists and true crime experts continue to study his life, trying to understand how a man could spiral so completely into darkness. They point to his paranoid schizophrenia, his childhood obsession with death, and his detachment from reality as key factors in his transformation from a troubled boy into a killer who drank the blood of his victims. Yet even with all the analysis, one chilling question remains. Could anyone truly have predicted the horrors he would unleash? Today, The Vampire of Sacramento is remembered not just as a serial killer, but as a cautionary symbol of how the human mind can fracture under pressure, paranoia, and obsession. His story serves as a dark reminder of the fragility of sanity and the terrifying depths to which it can fall. Sacramento has moved on, but the memory of Richard Trenton Chase's crimes will never fade. For those who study true crime, his life and death remain a haunting example of madness, violence, and the horrifying consequences when a delusional mind is left unchecked. If you found this story chilling, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the darkest corners of human history.